So it's been a while since I've been able to work on the wiring on the Jaggernaut, and lately I've got some other things nailed down. Finally got the kids in cars that are running decently, and so I'm able to dedicate a little more time to it. And the problem is, it's been over a year since I've worked on it, and I forgot all the little details that I'd left hanging that I wasn't able to get around. You know, little hang-ups in the process that I never engineered a solution for. I had wires hanging that I didn't remember leaving hanging. I had to relook at the wiring diagram. Oh, I made some changes, and so the wiring diagram doesn't copy anymore. It doesn't copy what's in the car. So I had to go in and relearn how I wired things so that I can fix the wiring diagram to match what I have in the car, because it's different. So, first off, I've got the fuel cell in the trunk, and there's no sending unit for the fuel gauge. And I do have a fuel gauge in here, and I'd never run the wire, so I came back here and I ran the wire, and this is the wire color I intended, and I've got it, but I need the fuel sending unit, and that was the issue I ran into. The fuel sending unit I was going to order went out of stock, and so then when I went to order it, the only other version was like $150, and I can't afford to spend $150 on a fuel sending unit. I'm sorry, that's just crazy. So I got one on order now. It's about $60, which is, you know, I don't like spending that much, but you know, it is what it is. It's not one of the swing arm sending units. It's got the straight tube, and so if I have fuel foam in here, if I have the foam in here to keep the fuel from sloshing, that'll protect that. And I think I do. I haven't been in the tank in a while to make sure, but I remember buying the foam. So if you don't have foam in your fuel cell, you want foam in your fuel cell. It keeps your fuel from sloshing side to side on corners. It'll keep your fuel sending unit reading correctly. It's also safer in a crash. You know, you're with the foam in there, if your tank ruptures, it's not just going to hit and spray fuel everywhere. It'll, you know, have to work its way through the foam, so it'll leak instead of spew. So anyways, at some point I'll get the sending unit in and I'll get this wired up. And then up here, I had a relay for the lighting in the wiring diagram, and I didn't include it in the car yet. And so I had to make a little bracket for my relay for my lighting. Along with that, I've got to run all the wires for the lighting. I really hadn't focused on that yet because I wasn't really planning on running lights on this thing. It was just a gee whiz, maybe at some point I'll be able to put some turn signals on this. I've got the wires mostly done for that now. I don't have a turn signal switch. I need to get a generic turn signal switch. But in doing that, I ran out of yellow and orange wire. Yellow and orange is going to be for the parking lights and the dash lights and things like that. The big, thick, solid yellow wires for the headlights, they're going to be run off the relay. And then I have a yellow and red for the gauge lights, I believe. No. Yellow and red comes down. You know, I don't have the wiring diagram in front of me. I can't remember. But anyways, the point of the matter is I didn't have all the wires run. So I've got all that run now. On the instrument cluster, I had two gray and brown wires coming off of it, and I couldn't figure out why. It should just have a gray and brown going to it. Well, the other gray and brown was supposed to be gray and pink, and I ran the gray and pink wire from under the hood now. I have an oil pressure switch here, and a sending unit and switch. The gray and brown is your oil pressure, the gray and pink is your dummy light. And so I've got that wired in. I ran it through my connector here for the engine, so that should take care of that. And I had to wire that up. Just little details like that all day long. And what kind of prompted this was I wanted to fire up the Jaggernaut today, and I realized I can't because right here on the fuse block I don't have the main power hooked up. This stud right here on the top does not have power hooked up to it yet. So once I hook up power to it, then I can start the engine. And that brings me to the other thing I realized I didn't have. I don't have any more 8-gauge wire to wire that up. I had some 8-gauge and I used it. What I do have is this thick wire here coming from under the hood, and it comes across to the shutoff switch, and that's a whole nother story there. The shutoff switch has a wire to it, and that's the alternator wire. That's the charging wire. And I had it actually on the wrong post. Come to find out whenever I was up in there looking at it, you want your charging wire to come in on the battery side of that connection. That way, whenever you turn that off, you're disconnecting the battery from the rest of the car. And I had it hooked up on the other side the car side, not the battery side. So if I got an emergency and I'd flip that switch up there, sorry, I had it out of focus. If I flipped that switch that was up there, it wouldn't have stopped the car from running. Now, what happened to the switch? Well, at the last time we tried to race the Jaggernaut and it failed spectacularly, the switch I had on the car failed. And so we went to the race shop real quick at the race and bought, a high dollar, I want to say it was $100 shut-off switch, and installed it. And it's been on the car for the last couple of years, and the car really hadn't done anything but sit in the shop. And I grabbed a hold of that switch earlier today, and it snapped in two. The switch has a super glue seam on it that holds the two halves of it together. Why they use super glue, I don't know. That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. So it's getting some JB weld. I got this precarious balance set up here to put pressure on it. Tomorrow I'll take the weight off of it and see if it holds. I don't want to take it loose until tomorrow, though, just because I want to make sure that's fully cured, because it's JB weld. It's not a permanent fix, not as permanent as I'd like. So I've got to come up here. This is the car side, this is the battery side. I've got to connect this here to this one, and I've got to have another wire connected to this one that comes down and over to that there. Sorry, over to that stud there to give main power to the car whenever I have this switch turned on. So getting closer, really close to done on the wiring on this thing. I've got the Jaggernaut for sale on the 24 Hours of Lemons forum, and I've had 0 bites on it. But if I get the wiring done, even though I'm not getting any bites, if I get the wiring done, the price is going up. And it should be dead nuts reliable once it's finished. I still have to come up here and sort out the headlights and turn signals. I've got a connector on either side for wires for the headlights and turn signals. And part of my issue is the high beams are right here in the middle on the hood, and so I'll have to make a quick disconnect so that you can take the hood on and off and not have to worry about that breaking. More than likely, it'll just be, I'll have a way to tuck them away so that if you're not doing a night race, if you're just doing a regular race, you can just leave them unplugged. I haven't got that far yet, though. I did use this style connector for the cooling fan, and I may use that same style connector for the headlights, just because if I pull them, this just pulls apart. If you tug it hard enough, I'm not going to pull on that with one hand and end up tearing something up. If I had both hands free, I could get to both sides of that connector, just pull it apart, but it pulls apart pretty easy. I have the same kind of connector back here for the alternator charging wire, and I believe that's the what wires? Oh, that's the starter wire. Since that type of connector can handle more current, that's what I'm using for those. These cheap Chinese kits are wonderful for small stuff, but they don't carry a lot of current. Those will carry 60 amps, I think. I believe that's what they're rated for. I shouldn't be near that, though. The alternator is only a 55 amp alternator. So, hope that gives you some inspiration to work on your rides today. Some point here soon, maybe I'll get the Jaggernaut up and running and post some video of it. Oh, and I still have 2 broken wheel studs to fix. Not sure how they broke. Car just sitting here not doing anything. Actually, it was sitting out front, and it was in the middle of winter. It got freezing cold, and I came out the next day and they popped. So it was the temperature change, but since when does temperature change pop wheel studs? I've never seen that before. Kind of crazy, but it'll get fixed after wiring.